Okay, so I'm Dawn Hartley. I'm a dance artist based in Fife. I've got a long practice of teaching choreography and working with dance as a participatory art form.
And I'm MacArthur. I'm a composer. I compose and record music for dance and theatre and short films. I also play bass in a Scottish band called Sugar Nifty, who have done quite a lot of live work around the world for many years, actually.
Okay. And what were you doing before lockdown? What was your work life like?
I was involved in a series of different projects, which meant that I was getting up really early and going to Glasgow, teaching in a primary school in the mornings, then travelling over to Edinburgh to Craigmillar to work at Lyra Art Space, which was basically I was doing maternity cover for the artistic director of Lyra then, and then I would travel home. So it was kind of quite a bonkers couple of months, wasn't it? Yeah. I was also working with the Maryhill Integration Network to make a performance for the Theatre Royal that was supposed to be on the 20th of March. How about you, Quee?
Well, I was doing some composing at home and recording for a project. Sugar Nifty were doing a bit of rehearsal, and we were getting ready to release our album, which was going to be kind of the mix. We'd done most of the recording. There was just a couple of overdubs to do, and we were going to release it. So that's pretty much what we were doing before all of this started. Yeah.
So what did your general day-to-day look like?
Well, at that particular time, I was getting up at 4 in the morning to go and get the first train out of Perth, the cheap train out of Perth to go and teach, and travelling back here, getting home for about 7 o'clock. We live in Newborough, North East Fife. I think I said that to you. Yeah. I should maybe point out I just turned self-employed in September 2019, so I was trying to do as much work as possible because I had no idea whether I would have any work rolling on even before of all this.
Yeah, so I wasn't traveling so much. Sometimes I'd get up and give Dawn a lift. If she was getting the train, I'd give her a lift. Then otherwise I'd come home and just kind of work away on whatever music I was working on at the time, and do some recording. Sometimes I'd go and rehearse with some guys I play with locally, and if I was rehearsing with Sugar Nifty, would go to wherever we were. We rehearse in different places in Scotland, and sometimes here, sometimes in RSA, sometimes in Edinburgh.
Can I just remind you about the project that you were doing just before lockdown? Just because I think that's quite funny.
All right, go on.
You can remember Navigate the Magnetic North project?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Immediately before.
Well, just because it's quite interesting.
That's immediately before, like the week before lockdown, I was involved in something called Magnetic North, which is kind of about looking at your practice as an artist with another group of artists. And we went up to Findhorn, and it was really interesting. I'd never had that opportunity to spend a week looking over my work and what I had done and how I do it, and listening to other people. And it was very helpful to me. And interestingly enough, my conclusion was that I would really like to do more working with other people in the same room. I felt like I was doing too much on my own in my studio. Haha. So that was my conclusion. Next year, I'm going to do lots of work with other people, outside of sitting in my own studio. And look what happened.
Did I ask you what your social life was like?
Not yet. Dawn, you go ahead.
So
social life.
Your social life like before lockdown? How did what was that?
Well, I don't know. Usually we moved to Fife about 12, 13 years ago, but we tried to keep contact with our folks, the friends we knew in Edinburgh, because this is a really small town, and we just wanted to keep connected to those guys because we're not that far from Edinburgh. So I guess what we would normally have done for social life would be go to Edinburgh for a couple of, like a night or 2 nights, and we'd play poker. Got poker people that we play with. And the other place we like to go to is Glasgow. go to Glasgow and see a gig or go to the pub and meet some pals. Really, it was pretty limited though. We didn't have much of a social life in January, February, March. Celtic connections, of course. We were at Celtic connections.
I think I've maybe got a different viewpoint on it. That I think I've got more people that I know in Newbury itself that I play music with.
Yeah.
So that's a kind of a social aspect. Even that we're just playing some tunes for fun together regularly. And other than that, there's the band Sugar Nifty is a very sort of big part of my social life, because when we were playing in Scotland and England, usually we kind of meet a lot of friends, as well as the band themselves being my friends. And as Dawn says, we go and see people in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Dundee, Rory Ferry, wherever they may be, and catch up with them. So yeah, we're quite busy, but we do make time to go and see people.
It was usually. Well, that to me is a big shift. That I didn't know really anybody in the town that I've lived in for 12 years, but because we would always go somewhere else to socialise. Occasionally, there's a nice there's an old distillery been revamped here, or an old abbey anyway, and occasionally we'd go to something there, wouldn't we? Maybe, I don't know, about 4 times a year. But yeah, it's a big shift. We would usually be travelling non-stop. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of travelling.
A lot of driving. Yeah, and a lot of arrangements. So you take that car there, and I'll meet you there, and all that stuff.
If you cast your mind back, what did you hear anything about COVID? Did you have much knowledge of it before then? Before the actual lockdown?
I think yes.
Well, yeah. I went to China in November 2019, and a friend of mine a dancer who was there went back to China in January, and so then I started to hear from him that there was something kicking off and that he wasn't going to be able to. They might be going into lockdown, and I remember saying to Quee, "Oh, there's this thing somebody said about this thing in China, but China, everybody lives so close to each other, it's not going to affect us, is it?" And we were like, nah. Yeah, and then we started to hear. Do you want to say more? Do you want to?
I absolutely. Yeah, there just things started coming in, and kind of news reports and people that we knew talking about things. So I think in December there was certainly heard some bits and pieces in December, and then that was
later, but yeah.
Then that was sort of amplified in January. But essentially, I would say that our attitude was a bit like that attitude to kind of bird flu or SARS. Or things like that.
Oops.
That
it's all right, just leave it.
Yeah, it's my phone falling out of my pocket. And we were just like, oh well, God, yeah, that's like one of those things. And obviously, we didn't think, oh, this is going to come here, until the point that it was very clear it was really, really serious.
I had a friend who was flying back to Germany, and she said, "I've got to get back to Germany before we go into lockdown." And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, the Germans are overreacting to something, but that's Germany, and then feeling slightly like uneasy when I read reports about Italy. I was like, what the heck is going on?
At the point of lockdown, how did your work life change? What was the reaction to the actual initial lockdown?
Well, at Lyra, we actually closed down before lockdown, because we'd already heard that there was a few people on staff who had more contact with families in Italy. And then when we were doing sessions, we were starting to get about half as many children coming along to sessions as usual. And the parents were saying, we're not sending them to do things together with other people because we've heard this thing is going to be really dangerous. So we were starting to get really concerned. And as one of the staff members was pregnant, she was really freaking out. So we got a sort of emergency Sunday night. We're closing the building tomorrow, and that was ahead of the national lockdown. So we were kind of like, right, maybe this is an overreaction, but we have to do something, because we know that until we know what's going on. I don't know. I know that I just was in shock for quite a long time. I couldn't really understand what was going on. When I look back, I just was really scared the whole time, really scared. I remember, I don't know if you remember this, there was a big fuss about the fact that there would be no staff to bring in the food off the fields, and what we're going to do and all this. And I started freaking out because the co-op in Newburgh started not having any food. And then I would come back from the shop going, there's nothing in the shop, there's nothing in the shop. Sort of, yeah, anyway. It brought up a lot of old neurosci, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I remember from the point of view of what's changed is that obviously as a musician, all gigs ceased to be possible. I mean, there was a lot of chat immediately before, like lockdown, literally the day before, I had met up with some musicians I was working with, and we had a rehearsal together for a gig we were going to do the following week. And we're sort of going, do you think it's going to, do you think it's really going to mean that it's all shut down? I will, like, maybe we can do this next month or something. We might have to cancel that gig, but we'll do it a month later or something like that. We had no idea, really. But we were all aware it was a serious thing, and we were going, yeah, well, it's nice to rehearse, but we all kind of knew we weren't going to do a gig. And so that's a huge difference. No gigs at all, for all of this time.
We were waiting to hear from the Theatre Royal whether they were going to go ahead with their big performance, which would have involved 400 dancers. And believe it or not, they took like about, I don't know, it was about 5 days to actually say, no, it's cancelled. It was all like, oh no, it's going to go ahead, it's going to go ahead. And we were all thinking, how? Meanwhile, of course, half the cast, there was a community cast of 30, they were saying, oh, and I don't want to take part in something where there's hundreds of people, it's not safe. So we were going, what is going on? I think that was a really telling thing. All the huge organisations just seem to take forever to make any public announcements, whereas all the smaller organisations, the ones that I've been connected with, were able to kind of do stuff and really tell everybody, we've got to do this, we're doing this really quickly, whereas the other organisations were like, I don't know, it was like those ocean liners lumbering into a port somewhere. They were really, really slow to react.
Yeah, and then as the time went on, everybody realised that this kind of recording video was the only thing that we would be able to do as musicians. So to launch our album, we actually went to a big open shed in Balquidder, and we kind of filmed ourselves performing there, which was good. It was good within the kind of regulations and everything in the summer. And then we had made some other short, more daft fun films to some of the tracks we'd done. And then there was all this thing like we're doing now, where we're kind of getting accustomed to looking at ourselves talking on Zoom, and then talking to other people and presenting things on Zoom. So we gradually got into that. It's quite a steep learning curve, really, and more from the point of view of kind of being aware of seeing yourself all the time, and just having this kind of constant kind of need to kind of present things well, and get your ideas across in video over Zoom or Teams or whatever platform you're using. I mean, that's quite a massive effort, but something that we did make the effort to do and kind of adapted to.
We kind of had
gradually.
to, didn't we?
Yeah, there wasn't really any other choice other than kind of not have any work or do stuff on Zoom and make video.
Yeah, I have to be busy. Well, that was the thing that when the lockdown happened, I was really like, what the hell? The thing that I love doing is connecting with other people in a room or outside. That's what I love doing. I don't really want to do solos on my own or these sort of things. So it was like, well, let's try this thing and find out. It's pretty grim at the start, actually, was trying to do things. But yeah, just sort of muddle through, I suppose. Yeah, and I was able to, two of the people that I was doing freelance contracts for kept saying to me, will you do another month? Will you do another month? But it was, looking back, I kind of wished they'd said, can you do another 6 months instead of doing it like that? Because it was terrifying that we might not have any income, really. That was a bit scary, yeah.
Yeah, and as time has gone on, we've actually got kind of more work.
Yeah.
As kind of total, like we're completely freelance, we're both self-employed.
Yeah.
So that was obviously a pretty massive concern at the start of it, and as time has gone on through it, we've found a way to kind of work differently.
Your social life at the point of lockdown, did it just completely switch off, or did you manage to keep in connection with people, or how did you deal with that?
We've had quite a lot of Zooms with people, and when we're allowed to, we have actually met up and gone for walks with people and talked to folk outside and kind of met in people's gardens and things like that. And when that was allowed.
When did we meet in people's gardens?
In the summer.
I don't remember that. I don't think we've done as much as Quee thinks. I think we've done I think we've maybe had about 4 Zoom catch-ups. We tried, like, one of my family said we'd do this family quiz thing, but shit, so we did it twice, and I was like, oh no, I hate this. It's like, we're like, competing with each other to see who's clever enough. Oh my God. Anyway, that didn't work for me. I'd rather just blether.
It's just, having a blether. We've done actually, so if you counted them up, Dawn, there's actually a lot.
Okay.
I think he's probably felt quite isolated. How did you deal with the isolation?
I think just getting out of the house for me is the number one thing. It's like, we walk together more. I usually go for a walk every day anyway. That's my usual thing.
I used to walk from MacArthur to the car park. That was it. Even though I'm a dancer, that was the amount of walking I did. But now we're doing about an hour and a half every day.
Yeah, so that's a difference.
I guess, I don't know. Still, I think this place is quite remote, so you can feel really isolated. You could pretend there was no such thing as a pandemic going on up this hill.
Something at the start that was really, to me, completely illogical was this thing of, like, we went for a walk, a wood nearby, like within 5 miles radius of where we live, and there was a massive council sign saying no parking, no walking here, and it's like, it's a wood, it's with really wide paths,
like that sort of crime tape. It wasn't
and
crime
it's
tape,
like, out of all of the kind of things that you could have done to sort of freak people out, it's like, that was the most ridiculous thing I remember. Same from that time.
The kiddies'
kiddies'
playground. They
chain
the swing,
tie up the swings.
There's 2,000 people live in this village, for God's sake.
Great, that's the most important thing to do. So there's bizarre things like that were just like, what? Why would you do that? And that's been borne out that sort of stuff was pointless. Really,
because we weren't even being told to wear masks at that point.
That's right.
Wandering around not masked, but you can't park your car and take your dog for a walk if you had a dog. It was a bit.
So
that was really annoying. That was what started. We spent many nights ranting about the government and what the fuck were they doing, didn't we?
Yes.
We still do, actually.
How's your work life evolved to deal with this situation? Do you see it being like this permanently, or have you found new ways to work? Or?
I've found new ways to work, but I hope it's not going to be like this permanently. I mean, we changed this room into a mad dance studio, and it's not right. And Quee's music studio, which is outside, like a sort of hut at the end of the drive, we made that into a sort of mad dance studio, didn't we? Mm-hmm. But it would be effective for certain things, but it's not really. It's such a different thing. It's not a substitute. It's just a different thing. I think there's a lot of. I would really like to not have to drive to Glasgow to go for a 1-hour meeting. That's going to be something I would like to encourage people to not do. I've got there's a couple of organisations that I work with on fundraising capacity, and the idea of going to meet them to talk about fundraising is like, well, no, we can just sit and do this here. So I'm hoping that'll be able to continue. But it's the actual getting into a school gym or a church hall and doing some actual creative dancing. That's what I'm looking forward to going back to, or going forward to somehow.
Yeah, I think thankfully I am expecting gigs to happen, and we've been talking about outdoor gigs, and I think later this year there will be some outdoor gigs. There may be even indoor gigs in large spaces. So it's really important. I suppose, like, from the point of view of what people regard as essential work, what people are saying that, you know, like this kind of work is work and this isn't. I feel that musicians and music have been kind of well left out of things, in terms of people don't regard it as work for some reason. Don't know why. Because it actually generates an enormous amount of income for the UK and for musicians who are part of the economy as well. And so I think there just has to be kind of very creative and imaginative ways that people, like, well, just do things outdoors, don't have many people, have them spaced out to start off with, and then gradually, as things get sorted out, we'll be able to have more gigs indoors and things will take off again. So that's the kind of live performance aspect of it. Another part of my work is more to do with recording, and essentially that hasn't changed. It's just that I can't actually, I have to send things. I'm currently doing a project where I am investigating, collaborating with people online, which is something I did before this to a degree, but it's just increasing the kind of knowledge of that and finding out new ways of working with that. And that's interesting. It's going quite well, but I'll be very glad to be back in the room playing with actual people in the same room when that's kind of deemed possible to happen. Yeah, I mean, we can have rehearsals just now within certain rules, and you know, that's only going to increase as this year goes on.